Hello and welcome back to the third webinar for MarshWatch. Today we're going to be looking at a variety of songbirds and other sort of more common backyard birds that you may be familiar with and that you may encounter. And we will also take a look at the green frog. And we're going to jump into some plant ID today as well. This will help you again with your habitat surveys for the marsh monitoring program, because you will be asked to categorize the amounts of these different plants that you see in the habitat. But first, let's start with our birds for today. So the first species that we're going to look at is the common yellowthroat, which is a small warbler. And for those of you who don't know, warblers are a family of small songbirds. They're usually seed eaters or insectivores with small pointy bills, and they often have varying combinations of yellow, black, and white coloration. So the common yellowthroat definitely fits those criteria. It has a small pointed bill, and it's quite an active bird, but it's also a little bit secretive. It likes to hide in tall vegetation. If you do happen to catch a glimpse of the male common yellowthroat, you'll see that it has a distinctive black bandit type mask with an edge of white above. Like the name suggests, it has a bright yellow throat, and also that yellow continues onto the breast. And the upper parts are a dull olive brown color. The song of the male common yellowthroat is often described as witchy, 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 or witchety, witchety, witchety. Usually it's a combination of either 3 or 4 of those witchety units. So let's take a listen here. And you will often hear them singing again from reeds and other tall vegetation. The female common yellowthroat is a lot more drab than the male, so she's a little bit olive brown in color, and she has variable amounts of yellow on the throat. So different individuals some of them have lots of yellow, and then some of them have very little. As you can see in these images, each of these females has a different sort of amount of yellow. And the throat, that bright yellow throat, contrasts with the darker olive brown face. And there's also a faint white eye ring. The diet of the common yellowthroat, so they glean prey off of vegetation and the ground, mostly insects and spiders, and so that's why they have that small pointy bill to pick up those little prey items. And they prefer to hang out in dense, low vegetation, primarily in wetlands, but also in moist grassland and coulees. And again, this is a species that you will very often hear rather than see in these vegetation patches. And this is a migratory species in northern North America, so the Maritimes is part of their breeding range. Another warbler species that you are likely to encounter on your surveys is the yellow warbler. So this is, again, a small warbler, small songbird, with a bright yellow body, a yellow greenish back, and a stout, sharp bill. So the bill of the yellow warbler is a little bit thicker than the bill of the common yellowthroat. And males of the yellow warbler also have these chestnut-colored streaks on the breast. And the song that the males will use to attract mates is a sweet, sweet, I'm so sweet pattern. So it's very high-pitched and very melodious, which you will hear in this recording. So again, it's got a very sweet quality, which is a little bit different from the common yellowthroat, which has a little bit more of a deeper and harsher song. The habitat of the yellow warbler is basically any disturbed or regrowing environments along wetlands or streams, although you can find them in other places depending on the time of year. And they are insectivores, so they eat a wide variety of insects, including midges, caterpillars, beetles, leafhoppers, wasps, and they also occasionally eat plant matter like seeds or berries. And again, their breeding range covers basically all of North America. Now, another yellow-colored bird that you may encounter is the American goldfinch. And this is not a warbler, it's in the finch family, as the name suggests. So it's a small songbird with a thick, sharp bill. Its bill is much thicker than that of either the common yellowthroat or the yellow warbler. The male is very bright yellow on the head and body, with a black forehead patch, black wings with white wing bands, and a black and white tail. And there are two sort of main vocalizations that American goldfinches make. They do make a lot of different sounds, but possibly the most distinctive sound they make is their potato chip flight call. So it's a series of 3 or 4 notes kind of in rapid succession, as you can hear. And then they also have a very melodious, very finch-like song, which is a series of rapid notes. There's a lot of up and down note changes, as you can hear in this recording. So those are two of the vocalizations that are more common, but again, they make a lot of different sounds. So I encourage you to go and listen to the variety of vocalizations that this species makes. And the female American goldfinch, she, like the male, has black wings with white wing bands and a thick, sharp bill, but the females are a paler yellow on the head and body with more kind of olive tones, and they have a black tail. Goldfinches you can find anywhere with appropriate food plants and shrubs for nesting, so they like weedy fields and floodplains and various urban environments. Basically, they like open habitats, not so much wooded areas. And they basically only eat seeds, so they're quite common at bird feeders, and they like species like sunflower, thistle, and aster, various grasses and trees. And they're distributed across North America, but they only breed in the northern part of New Brunswick and in PEI. They are resident in southern New Brunswick and parts of Nova Scotia. So the Maritimes is kind of on the edge of their resident and breeding ranges. Another very familiar songbird for a lot of you, I'm sure, is the black-capped chickadee. So this is a very small songbird, and both sexes have a black cap and throat and a white cheek patch. They have gray wings and a gray back, and then light beige underparts. And their song is described as Phoebe or Hey Sweetie, or sometimes Cheeseburger. And it starts with a higher note and then drops down. So let's listen to that. And then possibly their most familiar vocalization is actually their alarm call. And this is why they are called chickadees, because they make a chickadee-dee-dee alarm call. And humans, we often hear this alarm call because the chickadees are frightened of us. So you're maybe a little bit more likely to hear their alarm call as opposed to their song. They have very diverse habitat preferences, so they basically are found in any habitat that has appropriate food and shelter for them. And their wetland habitats include willow thickets and swamps. They do prefer habitats with trees or shrubs. And their diet in the summer, spring, and fall is mostly animals with some plant matter. So insects and spiders and suet, which is common in bird feeders. They also sometimes scavenge meat from carcasses, and they eat seeds and berries as well. And they are not migratory, so they occur year-round across the northern United States and then southern Canada. The American robin is another pretty familiar backyard bird for many of you, I'm sure. So it is a medium-sized songbird. They are plump with a yellow bill, and they have sort of dark gray or black head, a gray back and wings, and of course that very distinctive rusty orange belly. One thing to note about American robins is that they have spots on the breast as juveniles. So that may throw you off if you're out surveying and you come across a recently fledged robin. But again, you can identify them as a robin at this life stage because they still have that orangey on the breast, that orangey color. And they have a very sweet song that you're likely to hear, especially in wooded areas. So it's characterized, again, as you heard in the recording, by this up and down pattern. And you can find them basically everywhere. They are habitat generalists, and their diet is mostly invertebrates and fruits. So earthworms, insects, and snails, and then more rarely larger items like snakes and shrews and aquatic insects. And they eat a variety of different fruits as well. And their distribution, again, it's very broad. So this is partly why they're so common and so familiar for us, is because they occur across North America. They are migratory in the more northern parts of Canada, and they are resident in sort of southern Ontario and the southern parts of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. So you may see them year-round depending on where you are, but for the most part, they are only present in the breeding season. Now, a species that you're probably familiar with that is not a songbird is the American crow. So this is a large corvid, and corvids are birds that include crows, ravens, and also jays. And what's interesting about corvids is that they are some of the most intelligent birds in the world. So one thing you may know about crows is that they are super smart and resourceful. And in terms of their appearance, they are solid black all over, and their plumage is a little bit glossy. And then they have a long, thick, slightly pointy bill, rounded wings, and a short, square tail. And their sounds that they really only make one call, which is their caw, which is a very familiar sound in a lot of urban areas, which you can hear here. So you're probably familiar with that harsh caw of the American crow. And you can find them anywhere where they can find food and places to perch. The only place that they're not super common is in large patches of forest. And they are dietary generalists, so they eat grains, seeds, nuts, and berries, but also small animals, various aquatic wildlife, bird eggs, and carrion. So anything that they can find, essentially. And like several of the species that we've seen today, they are resident in the more southern parts of Canada, and then they are only present during the breeding season as you move farther north. One thing to be careful of with the American crow is that it looks quite similar to another species that you may encounter occasionally, which is the common raven. And keys to distinguishing these two species is, number one, the bill shape. So the crow has a thinner and pointier bill than the raven. You can see the raven in the top right of the screen has a very thick bill. The tail shape, so the crow has a square tail, whereas the raven has a diamond-shaped tail. And then the wing shape, the crow has more rounded wings, and the raven has pointier wings. There are also differences in the calls that you should familiarize yourself with. The calls are similar, but the raven has a slightly deeper call than the crow. So again, be aware that you may see either of these species. And another sort of dark colored bird that you may encounter is the common grackle. This is a medium songbird with a long, heavy bill that's slightly pointy, and their build is kind of lanky, so they have long legs and a very long tail. The male is dark overall with brilliant iridescent in certain lighting, so the head appears blue or purple and the body appears sort of bronzy. And the females are a lot less glossy and browner in color. I will say though that depending on the lighting, the differences between the male and the female can be pretty subtle. And they make a very metallic and harsh reedle-eek call, which you can hear. So this is a pretty distinctive call that you're probably, the more you hear it, the more you're going to recognize this species. And their habitat is everywhere except densely wooded areas. They mostly eat seeds, including agricultural grains and sunflower seeds, acorn and tree seeds. They also eat fruit and various animals depending on what they can find. And in Canada, they are only present during the breeding season. And finally, the red-winged blackbird is a species that, again, I'm sure many of you recognize. It's a medium-sized blackbird with a black cone-shaped bill, which again is pretty pointy. And the male is black in color with a red and yellow shoulder patch, hence the name red-winged blackbird. It's important to note, we mentioned in the previous webinar that depending on the position of feathers, birds can look different. And that is the case for the red-winged blackbird because sometimes their shoulder patches can be hidden by other feathers. And they have two kind of main vocalizations. So the first is their song, which is a harsh conqueree, which you can hear here. And then they also make a much simpler C sound, which is high-pitched. And the female is, as with many birds, a lot less colorful than the male. So she is coarsely streaked with brown. Females have a pale eyebrow and a faint yellow or orange wash at the base of the bill. And red-winged blackbirds are ubiquitous in wet, brushy, marshy habitats. And we showed you a couple of their vocalizations, their song and then their tsi call. but they also make these chuck noises that you'll often hear coming from, for example, reeds and other tall vegetation in marshes. And in general, red-winged blackbirds are super noisy, so you're very likely to hear them either singing or calling, and they make a wide variety of sounds. So it's worthwhile going and listening to their different vocalizations to get a sense of what you might hear. And so they are migratory in most of Canada. So they're only present in the breeding season, although there are certain small sections of southern Ontario and southern Nova Scotia where you may see them year-round. And our amphibian for today is the green frog. So it's a large frog up to 11 centimeters long. Like many frogs, they have variable body color, green, bronze, brown, even some are blue. Males often have a green throat, but not always. They have irregular spotting on the back, and they have leg bands. Again, that's common for many frog species. What is distinctive about them is their large dorsolateral folds. So these are the ridges along their sides. And they have pretty large tympani or external eardrums. So those circles, like kind of behind their eyes, those are called tympani, and they are their ears. They are found in shallow, permanent bodies of water. They often are seen basking along shorelines. And their call sounds a little bit like a rubber band. So let's take a listen. So I think that it sounds like if you hold a rubber band taut and then you pluck at it, it sounds a little bit like that. So now let's switch gears and talk about some common wetland plants. So wetland plants, they are adapted to wet environments and tolerant of flooding to various degrees. And there are kind of two categories that you might see. So emergent plants are anchored in the soil beneath the water. So they're growing right out of the water, and the leaves and stems rise above the surface. And non-emergent plants are rooted on dry land, but they may grow in moist soils. So sedges and emergent grasses are two categories that you're quite likely to encounter in various wetlands. So they are wind-pollinated monocots, and they have long, narrow leaves with parallel veins. Their flowers lack petals and are usually green or brown. And the grasses typically have more delicate flowers, whereas the sedges often have these pointy flowers that don't really look very much like flowers. They're highly adapted and modified. And their habitats, you can find grasses in diverse wetlands, whereas sedges are more common in shallow waters and wet meadows. Now, a specific kind of grasses that you may see are reeds, which are from the genus Phragmites. So their leaves are essentially like giant blades of grass, which makes sense because they are a type of grass. And they are bright green when fresh. Their stems are very tall, so up to 20 feet, and bamboo-like, meaning they are hollow. And their flowers are these feathery bunches at the top of the stalks. And their habitat is mostly wetlands. They colonize ditches. They are salt tolerant, so you can't find them in coastal wetlands and salt marshes. And they form large monoculture stands. So that means basically a bunch of them growing in an area. And there are two types of Phragmites, two subspecies. one of which is native to North America and the other is invasive. Cattails are another type of emergent vegetation that you're likely to see, especially in marshes and other wetlands with stagnant water. And so the leaves are bright green and flattened, and they have many leaves that are growing from the base. Cattails are pretty tall, so 5 to 10 feet, not as tall as Phragmites, but still tall enough to hide a human. And the flowers kind of look like a corn dog on a stick, which is pretty distinctive. The previous season's flowers are fluffy, so they kind of take on a more cotton candy look. And again, their habitat is deep or shallow water. They can form floating mats sometimes. And like Phragmites, they form large monoculture stands. Now, bulrushes are a little bit different. So they are a darker green. Their stems are round with a interesting spongy center, which you can see in the bottom left image here. They have a single spiked stalk, and they are tall like cattails, so 3 to 10 feet. Their flowers are essentially little tassels near the tip of the leaf. So you can see in the left here a marsh wren that is singing on top of a tassel of flowers. And they grow in mostly deep water and form large monoculture stands like cattails and reeds. And then rushes, in contrast to bulrushes, they're essentially like small bulrushes. So rushes are, again, dark green with round stems. They are more wiry than bulrushes, but like bulrushes, they have a single spiked stalk. And again, they are much shorter than bulrushes, so only up to 2 feet tall. Their flowers are near the tip of the stem, and they grow in moist soils. And so with that, we've reached the end of our second session of ID information for MarshWatch. So again, as always, we're gonna leave our contact information and social media information up here if you would like to get in touch, and see you for the fourth webinar.